Conspiracy theorists have for years been questioning if NASA is hiding things from citizens. Although they have the best public relations teams to debunk most theories, there are quite a few mysteries that have slipped through the cracks. Join us as we have a look at some of NASA's darkest secrets. The Apollo 11 missing tapes. Everyone that has learned anything about space knows that the Apollo 11 mission is where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first two men to land on the moon. It took place on July 20th, 1969, and it had people everywhere rejoicing with glee because the Americans had just narrowly beat Russia and other countries from achieving what, at the time, seemed entirely impossible. Years following, though, there were plenty of conspiracies that surrounded the successful moon landing. Apollo 11 had marked the end of the space race and fulfilled John F. Kennedy's promise that before the end of the decade, NASA would land a man on the moon and then return him home safely. The event would be recorded on live television and broadcast to a worldwide audience. But it was discovered that in the early 2000s, the tapes had just mysteriously vanished. There was talk that the videos may have ended up in another facility, but that meant that the moonwalk restoration project would be put on hold until 2009. It was strange that such an important piece of history could just disappear from NASA. But eventually it was concluded that the tapes were part of 700 other missing tapes that were part of a batch that was actually magnetically erased because NASA was faced with making dramatic budget cuts and needed extra tapes for recording. It's sad to think that such a vital recording would be lost forever in time and space. And it's also sad to think that in 2009, people would still need videotapes for recording. The Apollo astronauts denied insurance. As is expected with any astronaut about to embark on the most dangerous mission known to man, life insurance wasn't exactly going to be cheap. All of the astronauts also had a family to think about after their mission to the moon, and there was no guarantee that they would make it back alive. The Apollo 11 astronauts had a pretty ingenious plan up their sleeve, though to get by without life insurance, they had to sign autographs. By the time the mission was announced, the crew was already famous, and they knew that autographs would be fetching a hefty sum of money. They also knew that by sending their autographs to their families, they may be able to take care of them and pay for their children's college if they didn't return to Earth. Fortunately, the autographs weren't needed because the crew came back safely, but an Apollo 11 insurance autograph sold in space memorabilia auctions today can fetch anywhere near $30,000. NASA removes UFOs from photos. It's an age-old conspiracy that NASA has mysterious files and photos of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. Now, I'm no expert on the subject, but there are so many interviews with former NASA employees floating around that we may have to start believing the impossible. If NASA is actually doctoring up the photos of UFOs flying past their space feeds, why are they still trying to convince us that there's nothing else out there? When UFOs were first seen and talked about, it was believed that if citizens were to discover UFOs, there would be massive amounts of panic. But these days, scientific minds have wowed and impressed us enough that nothing really seems unfathomable. One employee in particular sparked increased interest in whether NASA had been changing photographs. Ken Johnston, a former consultant employed by Brown and Root in the Lunar Receiving Laboratory of the NASA Johnson Center, worked there in 1971, where he stored, curated, and cataloged Apollo images and moon rocks. He alleges that a request was made to destroy 5 boxes of unedited photos. Mr. Johnston was able to safely take some of the images that showed unexplainable objects, including buildings and structures on the moon. Johnston was then fired from NASA soon afterward, even though he technically wasn't even employed by them, making people wonder exactly what NASA is trying to hide. The James Webb Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope now has a predecessor, called the James Webb Space Telescope. and the new version took nearly 20 years to complete, billions of dollars, and a fierce political battle to make the project happen. And it also has people wondering if it was exactly worth it, and if it was, then why did a large part of the telescope's project plans get hidden from public knowledge? Until now. The James Webb Space Telescope has a 22-foot piece that some have classified as NASA's crowning achievement, a giant golden mirror. The telescope is still not finished. In fact, the hard part has only just begun. How exactly do you attach the world's most expensive mirror to the telescope? The new mirror is 7 times larger than the Hubble's. And can you just imagine the complexity that will come with trying to launch the thing? It's one of NASA's most expensive undertakings ever. We'll have to keep in mind that just one problem during the new telescope's launch could completely eliminate the $8.7 billion project. The plan is set to launch in 2018, and that means we're one step closer to unraveling the secrets of the universe. Astronauts' internal struggle. Being an astronaut is not an easy job. If you want to enter into this lucrative career, expect some fierce competition. Overall, it's estimated that you'll have a 0.08% chance of selection during the grueling process, even if your parents like to tell us that you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. They probably should have warned you that an astronaut might not be in your foreseeable future. We're more likely to get to be the first humans to live on Mars than we are to be chosen as astronauts for space exploration. It's no secret that after Buzz Aldrin's trip to space, he had a difficult time returning to normal life. Aldrin dealt with a lifetime supply of depression, divorces, and overcoming a bout of alcoholism. He also attempted to be a Cadillac car salesman and was rumored not to be a very good one, quitting after 6 months and not selling a single car. Depression is definitely a side effect of being in space for astronauts, and maybe it's because even though they've accomplished the impossible, they still feel like there's something else out there to be discovered. NASA is still a boys' club. With the release of the movie Hidden Figures, it was widely recognized that NASA is, and was, a career that mostly men only chose to pursue. Hidden Figures tells the story of 3 African-American women that were known as the human computers behind the successful space missions of Neil Armstrong, Alan Shepard, and John Glenn, making them able to safely travel into space. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were 3 female mathematicians capable of calculating complex equations by hand, but were, for the most part, not widely recognized as heroes, in the same way they should have been as their male counterparts. Of course, today, NASA strives for equality through successful programs that help women and girls become astronauts, and the last graduating class had a 50% female rate, marking it not only as historical but revolutionary for the program. However, it's also rumored that menstruation is actually one of the reasons that women were not allowed to be astronauts at first. In 1983, Sally Ride would be the first female in space. A group of male engineers would attempt to pack for her, asking if 100 tampons would be enough for a 7-day trip. Apparently, these guys had never learned a single thing about the female reproductive system. Whale oil powered the Hubble Space Telescope. NASA has attempted to quiet the rumors that the Hubble Space Telescope required whale oil to be powered. It wouldn't be such a far-fetched claim, since the oil can withstand below freezing temperatures and could tolerate the harsh conditions of space much better than anything else would have been able to. But there is a strong possibility that we have created a substitute lubricant now, but may have had to rely on whale oil in the past. Leave it to the History Channel to create a documentary called America, The Story of Us, where the idea was first proposed. Although, of course, NASA refused to say if the claims are true or not, because who would want to admit that we use the largest known animal in the world to power space exploration? NASA's involvement in Operation Paperclip. After World War II, the world was just a bit of a murky place because Nazis had slipped through the cracks of justice. It was no different in the scientific community either, as they could easily blend in anywhere and change their name. But with the CIA's covert operation called Operation Paperclip, 1,600 Germans became part of our U.S. space military and technology programs alongside the scientists. Some of these people were registered members of the Nazi Party and even held leadership positions during the war. It was no secret that the primary purpose of the operation was to gain a military advantage. The Soviet Union had similar plans with their own operation, where their military units forcibly recruited over 2,000 German specialists at gunpoint overnight. Operation Paperclip was an enormous help in order to defeat the Russians and other countries in the space race, and it went on for nearly 20 years longer than anyone had anticipated. With many of those affiliated Nazi documents about their whereabouts and involvement in World War II mysteriously going missing, those Germans could easily continue as part of the operation for years to come. Stolen moon rocks. This secret moon rock heist was a bit strange, but sometimes people, well, they'll do anything to make a little extra cash on the side. 3 interns at the space station decided that it would be a really brilliant idea to steal some moon rocks from the Apollo mission that had been stored away for years in a safe in the Johnson Space Center. They would eventually put the rocks up for sale on a website, and the genuine moon rocks were going for steep prices of $1,000 to $5,000 a gram. One of the Belgian rock collectors was suspicious, and that's when he contacted the FBI. The ringleader of the operation was Thad Roberts, and not only did they steal the moon rocks, but they also contaminated them, making them completely useless for further research. The contamination was done after the rocks were placed on top of a bed and used as a weird aphrodisiac between Roberts and his girlfriend. The FBI agents found that Roberts and 2 other interns had destroyed 3 decades of handwritten research notes by a NASA scientist, and in the process of the investigation also discovered dinosaur bones from a Utah museum. You can believe that that's one dirty little secret that was quickly cleaned up by federal agents. Are there any other NASA secrets that you think should have been on our list? If so, let us know all about it in the comments below. And if these dark NASA secrets blew your mind, just wait, because more mysteries of the universe exist on our channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching. One of the strangest fetishes our possible interstellar neighbors have is the mutilation of cattle. Alien hysteria was at its peak at the beginning of the 1940s and ending in the late 1990s.